I'm so excited to be here. I don't speak often because I'm always afraid that something new will come up the next day. I said, oh, I told these people some really old information. But I'm very excited to work in the field of technology and learning because there's so much happening at this time. I sometimes think I'm so glad I'm living in this period. Maybe the future would be really fun too, but I don't think I could have taken it in the 30s and 40s, so I'm really proud of my parents for going through so much in every way, but especially for education. Just a personal note, for the first time I'm using live captioning for a presentation. I've become recently aware of how many Americans, 10% of the American population, is somewhere on the reading, on the hearing deaf spectrum. And my partner and love of my life has a cochlear implant and is deaf. And when we go places, I'm raving mad and say, wow, it would take so little just to have a write-up or a handout or something. And so when we went to a doctor's appointment and they had the card system, I said, this is what I want. I couldn't pay attention to what was going on. I was just looking at the machine. So this is my first attempt to do this. And as it turns out, I needed to bring an extra projector because of the setup here and a screen. And it was, Lesley University, as fabulous as it's supposed to be, did not have a screen for me to take out because everything's on the wall. So I went in my basement and I got this screen. And this is my story. This screen belonged to my father. It is clearly 50 years old. I have not used it since he used to show us slides from our trips. But he was such a fervent supporter and advocate for education. So I sort of feel like he's with me today. And so it's a personal touch for me. I think that over the last month or so, when I've been doing my research for iPads and all things technical, it was a very hard decision to figure out, what population am I going to really focus on? Am I going to focus on students younger than post-secondary? Am I going to look at adults? And I decided, after talking to a lot of different people, that post-secondary and adults is what I want to look at because they are, I think, the most underserved in terms of learning, going to school, getting an education, doing better, being more successful in communicating, and success. And I think that the timing is really great for them and for us to take advantage of what's out there. So this is my love letter to you, love presentation to you on what I think is something, a couple of things, many things, more than I have time for, things that are really helpful. The title is Student Success. There's an app for that. And even though I'm going to be talking about apps, I'm really talking about a lot of new technologies. And the point I want to put out is that there's just so much now that's new and fresh, and it's just coming out. And a lot of it is very inexpensive, easy to use, sometimes both. And I just want to share that with you. I don't like giving a talk where I'm doing 100% of the talking. If you have a question, raise your hand and I will stop because you won't think of it later on and you're going to be, I wish I asked that question. Please don't hesitate to interrupt me. If you've got an iPhone, an iPad, a smartphone, a laptop, anything, use it. Use it while I have no problem. Just don't let the phone ring, but because I don't care, but maybe other people will. So I want to give you some definitions to let you know what playing field I'm starting off from. In my presentation, a student is anyone who wants to learn. It doesn't have to be actually someone who's matriculating or in a program or going to a course. Success is when the student reaches understanding, information, and communication. And an app is short for software running on a mobile, short for application, software running on a mobile or a digital device or a laptop. I find that right now, as I speak, there are two massive changing conditions. One is what I'm starting to call variabilities, and the other one is here, a constant expansion of technology in terms of its purpose, its applicability, its size, its cost, and its sophistication. So let me talk a little bit about variabilities. So about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I'm surfing the web, I'm looking for stuff, and I come across some really obscure reference to a conference that's next year. And basically, and I'm synopsizing here, they're saying that we no longer can identify individuals using the binary opposition of disabled/abled, as we now recognize that everyone is somewhere on the ability spectrum. Now, I know that, and you know that, but the problem is most of the world in education, many of the world, don't really know that or subscribe to that or do something about that. I know I'm talking to the choir here, but it's more obvious to me as being the director of the STEM division, and now I'm a faculty, how difficult it was to make changes to support student learning when you also have these dual issues of dealing with standards, rules, costs of what the university is able or not able to do, the supports that they're able or not able to do. And the biggest sticking point for me, not only as a division director, but as a faculty, getting faculty to make that shift is very hard because we're taught through experience or formally to present information in a certain way. But when you have to change that to support students, it's very hard. Even if your heart is in it, it's very, very hard. But I think the second point here is our saving grace. Educational institutions, legislature, and medicine, in addition to the public in general, have not fully arrived at this stage, but technology is constantly and rapidly moving beyond this thinking as devices let everyone do things that they could not do before. So what's happening is that even though, I thought about it too late to have a nice little graphic, but basically educators supporting students for success, the bar hasn't moved far from decade to decade, just slightly as more technologies are become standard or acceptable. But the technology is going almost like a straight line into the stratosphere. So there's a very big disconnect based on what we think we can do and what's possible for us to do. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about what I think is possible. So I'm focusing on the iPad because I just sort of spazzed out on the iPad. I just thought there were so many things that I liked about it. And when it first came out, I got one. And I said, holy moly, I can't believe this. And it's 2 years, almost 3 years later, maybe longer than that. 4 versions later, that's better. And I'm still enamored with it. And I post these points here for you to know why I think it's so. And by the way, you're going to get a copy of all of us that you're seeing, so you don't have to take copious notes. It's easy entry. When you have an iPad, how many of you here have your iPad with you? Okay, so you know, unless you have your password, you go from home to an app in 2 clicks. One hit the button, the home button, one to hit the icon that goes to the app. Unless you have a password, then it's 3. But you're 2 clicks there. Going to an application on a laptop or desktop, 5 minutes, because you're going to have to turn it on, you're going to put the password on, you're going to have to click here, you're going to have to click here, so, etc. The glass screen. I've looked at a lot of tablets. I do think there's a difference in the iPad's tablet, but the biggest difference all tablets have from keyboards is that it's glass. And most students have some sort of motor issue also. I'm going to say most, maybe at least 50%. But the glass screen allows you to, I have one. The glass screen allows you to glide across so you don't have to have pressure points Also, you don't have to hit a specific area. You can be sort of close. It makes a big difference in terms of using the iPad. The iOS structure, that's the operating system of the iPad and all of the Apple products. Simple icons, no hierarchical information to go through. Simple icons, and then when you hit those icons, you only get an app. You don't get something else. Everything is an app, even the settings where you're going to change what it does. It's all an app. It's personal, and it's portable. My mother, who is 84 years old, who wanted to use technology and hated it. She had a desktop, we got her a computer, she rarely used them, and so 2 years ago we got together because she lives in Wisconsin and she hates not being in contact with everybody else's online, especially her grandchildren. We're nothing now, it's all the grandchildren. And so we decided that we would get her an iPad. And we said, oh, this is a bad, because this is going to be expensive and she's not going to use it. And 3 days after, she got it for Christmas. 3 days after, actually about a week after, she was back home. So I called her, the big guilty call. So we spent all this money and I hope it's going to work. And I said, well, how do you like your iPad? And I'm just holding my breath. And she says, I love it. And she's whispering. And she says, but Brenda, I have something to tell you. I'm sort of embarrassed. And she says, I sort of sleep with it. I said, I don't understand. And she says, well, sometimes I like to listen to the music. And so I put it right by my bed. Or she loves to paint, and she always wants to go and find out about some painter whose name or work she's seen. Interestingly enough, we didn't show her how to use the internet. She found that herself by pressing Safari. We kept saying, press Safari, go to it. And she does that every day now. So, and that's one of the things that's said all the time for all users that I've interviewed, is that it's personal. It's very theirs, and you can take it with you. And that seems to be a very important issue for everyone. It's something that's theirs, and it's private, and it's customized for them. In terms of variabilities, I think that one of the other things that comes up a lot is that it provides independence. And so there's a lot of things that you can do here that's private. If you have a difficulty with reading or taking notes, that's private. But on the other hand, you're using something that everyone else is using. And so if someone knows, oh, they're using the same stuff we're using, so you're among everyone else. You're not special. You're not ratted out for having an ability or not having ability to do one thing or another. This is important for students who are in post-secondary. And also, the iPad is a charismatic supporter. And this is a new phrase for me, but I love it. And so I have a quote here. This is from Robert Brooks. I don't know how many of you know Robert Brooks. He's a famous psychologist. He works with students with disabilities. He's in 30 years in the field. I heard him in person recently, but I found his quote, which he also said in the presentation. He said, researchers have distilled a number of factors that enable children of misfortune to beat the heavy odds against them. One factor turns out to be the presence of a charismatic adult, a person with whom they can identify and from whom they gather strength. And in a surprising number of cases, that person turns out to be the teacher. I think that the iPad is also a charismatic supporter because it's supportive. It's not robotic. It's sort of like a dumbwaiter. In other words, it's there, but it gives you a lot of help. It's interactive. It's vibrant. It's there for you. And I would not underestimate that charismatic feature of the iPad, which you don't see in other tools because you have to have all of those components that I showed you before in order to make up that whole charismatic package. So I wanted to talk about a couple of applications and software and apps that I thought were really, really noteworthy. No pun intended. So Notability is an app that I found because so many people had asked about something that could help them take notes. And notes are a very difficult thing. I never appreciated how complex the process is in listening and taking notes. It's a very complex neurological process. I came to realize how difficult it was when I was researching for a couple of weeks with a person at the Albert Einstein College who was researching adults who were illiterate and who were coming to them to learn how to read. And there was one star student who, after about 4 or 5 years, really came from nowhere of, going to the grocery store, waiting in the aisle for 10 or 15 minutes till someone who looked approachable came down that aisle, asked them, which product is which, rather than trying to, depend on what the picture said. And so he was telling his story to me and some other people in the room, and I was taking notes. And he stopped and he stared at me, and he said, "I can't understand how you were able to do that you can listen and take notes." I'm a little bit of a fast note taker, although he didn't know that I scribbled a lot and some things I couldn't read later. But for him, he was just in awe. And I never forgot that feeling I got in my heart that he wanted that ability. And he wasn't able to get that ability because it's all about recall, too, and all about what you can get later. And students who succeed always, among other things, but always have the ability to recall later or review later because review helps you learn. Notability is an app that helps you do that. And what's great about it is that it's an app that gives you a surface that you write on. You can actually write, and I always suggest using a stylus. I wouldn't have anyone using an iPad unless you had a stylus like this, because it just has a rubber tip and it makes it so easy on your hands to select letters on the virtual keypad. But it has a paper surface. You can change the color of the paper surface. You can change how it looks. It can be no lines, grids, lined. You can record what's being said to you while you're taking notes. And you can adjust the hearing if you have earbuds or headset on. You can mail the notes to yourself later. You can mail the audio to yourself later. You can listen to it anytime. You can add photos to it right there, web clips right there. You can put your own handwriting there, and you can do search for words. So if you've taken a lot of notes, you can do a search and find your notes. The best part of it, it's 99 cents. You can't get a cup of Dunkin' Donuts coffee for 99 cents. So if you come to my
Babson College at the big forum, and I'm talking to about maybe 75
I'm sorry,
people.
this is
We're
running.
talking about notability.
Let me stop this. This is okay. I forgot it was automatic.
This is a
But
note for the
basically,
day.
this
So
document
hello
you
to them
see
at Babson
is what I
College.
mailed to myself. You can hear myself, and you can see the document that I put together, all squiggly things to show all the stuff you can put on the document. I'm sorry about that. But the thing is that it's a great, powerful tool. Now, some students, that's not going to fit. And there are different tools. You have to find the tool that fits for you. Another tool that's really great, it costs, actually it's a little cheaper given that the iPad can be as much as $3.99 at the least new, is Livescribe. How many of you know about Livescribe? Not many. I think it's sort of new. What's great about it, it's a tablet type of device with special paper on it, a special pen. My nephew has it, who's dyslexic. And he takes notes, but it also records what's being said in the classroom or wherever. But when he taps on a certain location of his notes, it goes back and plays back what was said when he was taking those notes. And he loves it. He didn't move toward notability so much. There was something about the writing with a pen, with paper, that really worked for him. And so this is a case where you really have to find out what type of fine issue that the student needs in order to help them with the very best product. But there are maybe 12 different apps. Some of them, most of them, I'm not too crazy about, but then it depends on what's the good fit for someone that are out there, and different devices. There's also, as everyone knows, the Dragon Dictation and the Mac Speech, which I use a lot. And some students that I know really love that. They can just talk and get those notes there. So it depends on what kind of learner you are, what type of reader you are, what type of writer you are, and how do you want to communicate. A couple of other apps I want to talk about. Brushes. I want to just mention this. Brushes is for students who, I think it's Brushes or Sketch. I think it's Brushes, where the students can draw. And this is really, I've seen this used in arts classes at Lesley University. What was singularly exceptional about it was that you can play it back and see each step of the drawing process, so you can see how the person grew as they did this piece of artwork, which is something that you usually can't do with art. You can see someone do it at the beginning, and then you see the finished product, but not the whole progression. I think we're going to see more products like that, where you can see a student's progression in whatever that they do. I would recommend that for any of you who are designing apps. Decibels. This is actually a life issue. There are many students who have a hearing disability, or for all kinds of reasons can't negotiate what's the right inside, outside level of voice to have. Decibels is an app you can have right on your phone. It measures where you are. So if you can identify that range that you want to be while you're talking, you can say, oh, I can talk louder, I can talk softer, and it's private. G-Flash, this is one of many flashcards. Again, this is highly personal of how you want to have flashcards. Flashcards are really great for many students, and you can have them. And there's flashcards that are made for every subject. You don't have to create your own if you don't want to. I already talked about Livescribe already. And here is where something that I personally have done a lot of, and I'm very excited about. One of the big challenges in post-secondary is that many institutions, Lesley certainly among them, is moving wholesale in some ways to online teaching from face-to-face or even from hybrid. This is a very difficult area to walk through, because in the past, let's say 2 years ago, many of our courses were also offered not only in the classroom but in 25 states around the country. That program stopped, and now it's only online, but we actually travel to Atlanta, to Montana, different places, and actually have these cohorts. And it's a wonderful experience to fly out and teach someone. It's a face-to-face. It's very personable. You can help students who have challenges. You can have students who can't get it for any time. You can really customize on the spot. Then comes online, and no one ever even sees you. The most that they're going to see you possibly is that they see your photograph in the the profile, and they might hear your voice if you recorded something. This is a no man's land for students who need some sort of support. So in a lot of ways, we've had to try to anticipate who our audience is, especially if that audience hasn't declared themselves with a disability. So you can't ask anyone, as you know, but you have to assume that there's some students who are coming back after many years after not being in school. People are coming back to get a master's after teaching in a classroom for a long time. They've not had these skills. They might have had some overlays of other issues, both in terms of their abilities and in terms of just being a student. So 2 years ago, when we were making this change, we had a version of Blackboard that was not helping us. That was the kind way of putting it. And so now we have a new version that actually, the major big piece is that it has tremendous capacity to take in audio and video. And I couldn't wait. So, okay, I'm going to try this. And so I designed a new course that I'm teaching, Educational Robotics, Introduction to Educational Robotics. And it's a course that we only taught online until last year. And if you can imagine, we have all these robotics kits. We've got teachers who mostly never put a screw to a robot in their life. And I'm going to do this long distance, and they're going to buy these robots and have them deliver these robot sets, not even the robot. And they're going to put them together. I wanted them to do two things. One, to be able to accomplish what we did in the classroom, and two, to transfer the excitement they have about science to their students. You can only do that if you show them how to do that. If I can't engage that teacher and I can't get that teacher to learn, then they're not going to be able to transfer that to their classroom. So what I found was that Blackboard had a capacity to take in a lot of video, but then what else I found out was that the web had tremendous number of videos, tremendous, and they're free, and they give you all of these embed codes that you can put right into Blackboard or whatever course management service you have, and you can put in the link, and you can put, and it'll play it right away. So I'm going to show you one, maybe two of these videos to give you an idea. So this is, I think, week 3, and we're talking about the robotic arm. It's a $49 robot that gets delivered at their house, made by Legos. You know, it takes you about 2 days to put it together. It's a cool thing, but I think it freaked a few people out. But I wanted to have them understand why it's important. And I realized that education is all about, well, science education really is all about stories. So I'm going to share one of these stories with you.
I played with some of the greatest blues players in the world. Muddy Waters, Screaming Jay Hawkins, Howlin' Wolf. No one ever told me that playing drums would eventually wear things out. I played hard. See, a lot of guys play flat-footed like that. I played way up on the pedals like that. So my feet were like that, man, banging those pedals like. So now we know what wears these out, don't we? This is the gold and platinum for the work I did with the Doobie Brothers. You just try and learn to live with it, but man, you know.
He always had some knee soreness and issues. You just hear him wince when he goes up and down the stairs, kind of like, or some little swift turns, he'll just really just, yeah.
Come on over here and move that way just a little bit. So you have a lot of pain today, huh?
Well, yeah. My knees give me enough pain to where it gets really bitter.
He came home and I watched him get out of the car and stand there for at least a minute. And I thought, oh, gosh.
The problem with pain is that it's a slow grind, and it just beats you down really slow.
Are you getting any clicking, catching, buckling,
Oh yeah,
things like that?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Has your walking distance decreased?
Yeah, sometimes going from the house to the car is an issue.
Any discomfort that way?
Yeah.
Okay. And now I'm gonna have to push here for the. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I'm used to it hurting.
You've lost all the cartilage, so that's all bone on bone now. Basically, what we do is go in and just shave off that bad bone.
We're going to use Makoplasty. It's a resurfacing of the knee versus a total knee replacement.
And that gives that nice smooth surface.
And the incision is going to be about this big. Right about there. Okay. We'll take good care of this guy.
Can't wait till we're on the other side. Just can't wait.
Here we are.
In San Diego, Sharp Coronado is the first hospital to utilize Makoplasty.
Oh, nice outfit. Thank you. You look good too. Let me sign your knee, okay? Make sure you get the right one. All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
You'll be just fine.
I'm going to be using robotic arm technology with 3D modeling. We put 2 trackers here, 2 trackers here, so the computer is reading the position of the knee. There we go. Engage. If I turn the leg one direction or another, that robot knows where it's at based on the trackers.
That's really good registration there, 0.29. So
The computer is going to tell us how to balance the knee, make the knee stable, and how much bone to take. If I can't go to this part of the knee, the computer won't let me do that. If you go outside the line, it shuts itself off. All this is burred out to make a bed for this prosthesis.
Okay, posterior post.
The future of orthopedics is robotics.
Yeah. I can't believe they're going to get you up walking. That's like unbelievable.
We'll see what kind of man he is. Almost every knee replacement takes
the ligaments. And so what we do for a partial knee is we keep the ligaments, the ACL is retained, the posterior cruciate is retained.
Feel good to be off your back?
Well, I was pretty comfortable.
Stand up. All right. You're up. You want to go for a walk?
Sure.
Good.
People have the surgery to get moving again, to get them down on the floor playing with their grandchildren or going on fantastic vacations and hikes with their families. That's why I'm a physical therapist, to help people return to the things that they want to do most.
You are looking great.
We don't often see people up and walking on their first day, and we've seen more of that with the Makoplasty.
How you doing? You doing all right?
Good, man.
Feel better?
I can already tell that there's a difference. I put my foot down. The bite wasn't there. I've done this a long time. I can't imagine my knee being any better. If somebody let me play in their band, I'd be their band.
I love that video because it's a great human interest story. But also, how difficult would that be if I did not have a video and I had to read an article? That same information is in several articles that run 3 to 5 pages each with all of the scientific jargon that was there. How is that going to be attractive to a reader in addition to all the other text that's in an online course? So what I try to do is try to remove as much text from the online course as humanly possible. Now, what was there was the instructions of what to do. Sometimes there was audio. When the students had to record their homework or provide their homework, we didn't provide a paper. We let them, well, they could if they wanted, but most students chose the other options we provided, such as they could take a picture or record a video showing their completed robot, how it worked, what were their challenges, and they saw each other's stories. It has the same effect as writing a paper. We got way more response, deeper response, more interaction with each other than we've had in the past with the paper, than we had in the past in the classroom, because this way you have more time to look through it. The other video I wanted to show, it's all about stories. I'll show you one more. I found video for every type of robotic situation that I was looking for. I also found on YouTube a very meticulous set of 5 videos connected to show you how to put the robot together. I was going to record myself, but I found this great guy from Europe with this heavy accent, lovely accent though, and very meticulous. You put this piece together, there's 16 pieces, and then that's section 1 of 5. Everything that you want, and completely free, legal to take, share, embed, it was there. The work that we had to find was find the right kind of multimedia environment or multimedia for the situation. So I think for us, I and the other faculty who worked with me on this was finding the stories. I'll show a part. This was the video that we first found that let us know that it was the stories that would help us reach the students without having to embed so much text for them. Oh, let me stop here. You notice that they're all captioned. So you don't have to do the caption yourself. You can do that, but everything we found was captioned. Most stuff on YouTube, when it's very professional, is already captioned. Now I'll make sure I turn that on.
When people look at it, it looks crazy. That's a very natural thing. Sometimes when we look at it, it looks crazy. It is the result of reasoned engineering thought. But it still looks crazy. From the top of the atmosphere down to the surface, it takes us 7 minutes. It takes 14 minutes or so for the signal from the spacecraft to make it to Earth. That's how far Mars is away from us. So when we first get word that we've touched the top of the atmosphere, the vehicle has been alive or dead on the surface for at least 7 minutes.
Entry, descent, and landing, also known as EDL, is referred to as the 7 minutes of terror because we've got literally 7 minutes to get from the top of the atmosphere to the surface of Mars, going from 13,000 miles an hour to 0 in perfect sequence, perfect choreography, perfect timing, and the computer has to do it all by itself with no help from the ground. If any one thing doesn't work just right, it's game over.
We slam into the atmosphere and develop so much aerodynamic drag. Our heat shield, it heats up and it glows like the surface of the sun. 1,600 degrees.
During entry, the vehicle is not only slowing down violently through the atmosphere, but also we are guiding it like an airplane to be able to land in a very narrow, constrained space. This is one of the biggest challenges that we are facing, and one that we had never attempted on Mars.
Mars is actually really hard to slow down because it has just enough atmosphere that you have to deal with it. Otherwise, it will destroy your spacecraft. On the other hand, it doesn't have enough atmosphere to finish the job. We're still going about 1,000 miles an hour. So at that point, we use a parachute.
The parachute is the largest and strongest supersonic parachute that we've ever built to date. It has to be able to withstand 65,000 pounds of force, even though the parachute itself only weighs about 100 pounds.
When it opens up that fast, it's a neck-snapping 9 Gs.
At that point, we have to get that heat shield off. It's like a big lens cap blocking our view of the ground to the radar. The radar has to take just the right altitude and velocity measurements at just the right time, or the rest of the landing sequence won't work.
This big, huge parachute that we've got, it'll only slow us down to about 200 miles an hour. And that's not slow enough to land. So we have no choice, but we've got to cut it off and then come down in rockets. Once we turn those rocket motors on, if we don't do something, we're just going to smack right back into the parachute. So the first thing we do is make this really radical divert maneuver. We fly off to the side.
Diverting away from the parachute, killing our horizontal velocity and our vertical velocity, getting the rover moving straight up and down so it can look at the surface with its radar and see where we're going to land. And we head straight down to the bottom of a crater, right beside a 6-kilometer high mountain.
We can't get those rocket engines too close to the ground, because if we were to descend propulsively with our engines all the way to the ground, we would essentially create this massive dust cloud. That dust cloud could then go and land on the rover. It could damage mechanisms and it could damage instruments. So the way we solve that problem is by using the skycram maneuver.
20 meters above the surface, we have to lower the rover below us on a tether that's 21 feet long and then gently deposit it on its wheels on the surface.
As the rover touches down and is now on the ground, the descent stage is in a collision course with the rover. You must cut the bridle immediately and fly the descent stage to a safe distance from the rover.
I like that last part. Now, no question, they've had production help, right? But what's interesting about this is that in order to get the teachers to understand all the different applications of robotic arms, and there's a small part of the robotic arm in this rover after it landed, we have to give them materials for them to read. Now, there are scientific and other articles both scientists and non-scientists and curriculum developers on the Mars rover. And we could have given all of that for them to read in preparation for the assignment. Which would you choose? And also in the past, there was an issue about using video because it wasn't academically credible. In other words, you're not getting it from those who are the scientists. Every person in there, as dramatically as they spoke, was a scientist at NASA. So I would put that article, that video, next to any article that compared, gave you comparable information. In addition, what are you going to remember best? Your text you're going to read on this or that video? I bet you if I gave you a 5-point quiz on some of the salient points, you would have gotten them all because it was engaging and it was interesting. And now you know about why the Mars rover is so much of a magnificent accomplishment and how the robotic arm plays a role in that. I have not been able to get that same amount of instruction absorbed in a face-to-face or a previous version of an online course. And I realized that having these enriched video materials is the key to that. Also, many of these videos you can translate to other languages. So if you have someone who speaks Spanish or French, it doesn't go into all the different languages. You're not going to get Creole and things like that necessarily. But you can get other languages there, so language is not necessarily a barrier. Get back here. Another thing that we've been using to help students across the learning spectrum is to have them make their own movies. We've done this in the robotics course. That way they can explain what they're trying to do. I think that the quality of the information is a little bit higher to about equal. We've not lost the quality of information that students provide by not having them write up a paper about what they've been able to do with their robotics assignment. Some of them are just like when you write a paper, some have gone way over what the requirement was. Some of them met it. Almost all of them met. Some people were a little bit too brief. But they were engaged. They could explain what they were doing. And most people are more articulate in speaking than they are writing. There is some writing in the course. There's a final that they write with, but that they write about. But also they can also record that in video. So what we've decided in this robotic course is to provide students with several options of providing the different assignments. You can come out of this course never actually really writing a paper, but having some, actually I was going to say having write in the discussion, but we also allow you to do an audio discussion response. So that way someone can choose what they feel most comfortable doing and no one is put on the spot. There are a couple of things I wanted to mention that are not in this presentation because some people wanted me to bring up, and I think it's a very good point. I brought this up in my presentation at Babson several months ago, and I wanted to change up a little bit, but I think that it makes a good point. How many of you use iBooks? Okay. How many of you use iBooks Author? Excellent. For those of you, how many of you know about iBooks Author? Okay. iBooks Author allows you to create your own book and then play it, read it, on an app called iBooks. This was announced not quite a year ago. I think it's phenomenal. I think that it's a very slow tsunami. People are just starting to understand what its capabilities are. But in our Babson discussion, we had a nice audience discussion about what are some of the ramifications of having that. Since that time, I've talked to a few people, a few faculty who are starting to use it, and they're developing their own curriculum. Or I should say redesigning the curriculum that they are offering to students. This is in a master's program. so that a lot of the curriculum that they get or they were using or they developed before does not meet everything that they're trying to do. But with the book, you can create your own materials, put in video, put in multimedia, put in links, publish it, and give it to the students. There's a lot of discussion about that. Does that mean that you have to meet a certain peer review process for this? Do you have to go to the curriculum committee to make sure that you're not using, so-called standardized texts? Do you have to make sure that you're meeting the standards? Are you making sure you're meeting, in case of our individual initial licensure program for teachers, are we meeting the Mass DESE rules? There's a lot to look at that, but teachers are finding that they have much more flexibility in order to create a more fine-tuned series of materials for their students across the spectrum. This is very huge. A book doesn't mean anything unless you can read it, and many students, a third of students, don't read a book efficiently for all kinds of reasons, whether they have a acknowledged disability or not. And so I would encourage you to look at iBooks Author. It is absolutely free. You download it and it runs on a Mac. The iBooks app runs on an iPad. So you read the book on the iPad. You can also buy books. I'll show you briefly what it looks like because someone wanted to look at it. My last presentation I gave was actually created on iBooks Author. I just wanted to test it out, and I used the presentation as a PDF file, but I tried to see how it would look if I would publish it, and of course it wasn't ready to be published because I didn't put any bibliography information there. But this is how it looks. It looks very much like any other word processing or presentation tool. You can publish, it has an inspector, it has all the things that you ordinarily see for creating a presentation, but it has a lot of features built in where you can put in an index, you can put in a glossary, you can put in chapters. So rather than having different slides, you have these chapter blocks, and you can put in images. This was a presentation I did some time ago. And so I just thought, well, I went as far as I could without actually publishing because it wasn't ready to be published. And it was ready to take all my information. I said, my gosh, this is really something you can really publish. So I think it is a sleeper product that people have not got their heads around yet. So you create the book on iBooks Author on a Mac, and you can read the book on just about any Mac product. The MacBook, the iPod, iPad, iPhone. I want to bring up a couple of things too. Culture is not something I usually have been talking about, but culture makes a big difference in how you teach with video materials or any materials, especially with students who don't have English as your first language, or if you're teaching in an area or in a school that has a completely different culture, and you have to take that culture into consideration in addition to the materials that you have. When I was a teaching fellow in graduate school, there was a student who was taking a course. This was a CAS course. It was David Rose, actually. And this is when he was starting to use a lot of video and things like that. And there's a first 2 lectures. You can just watch the lectures to see if you want to enroll for the course. And then there's a lab, and I ran the lab. And so after the first lecture, students were coming to the lab about an hour later, and students were asking questions. But, well, it was really wonderful. It was very exciting. And then at the very end, another young student came in, and she said, I came to the lecture. I really liked David Rose. I thought he was really great. And then she started to tear up, and I asked, well, what's wrong? And it was the start of the spring semester, so the fall grades had come out. And one of her courses, she received a C. And that's not passing in a master's program, and she was very upset. And she said she talked to her, she just came from her professor, and he said, well, the reason that you didn't get a passing grade is because your English writing is not strong enough. It really hurt your final grade. And she was from Puerto Rico. Her native language was Spanish. And so she really wanted to take this course, but because it dealt with disability and technology and neuropsych, she thought, well, this is going to be too much for me to write about. And, you know, David Rose is like, you know, the king of UDL. So I said, well, you know, why not try this? So I said, well, you know, why don't you take the course? I think you'll love the course. No one has never not done well in the course. And when it comes to the midterm paper, turn it in Spanish. You know, I didn't think about, you know, who I was going to get to translate it, you know, but yeah, I figured, well, there's someone out there who can translate it, you know, please, you know, this is Boston, I'll get someone that's good. So I was very excited. So about 6 weeks later, I get all the papers, and I'm really excited. I told David about it. And I was going back home to, you know, put all the papers in on the table, and then I was going to pick out hers first because I'm going to have to get someone to translate it right away. And I didn't see the paper. And I said, oh, she decided not to do the paper. And I was sort of disheartened. And then I went through the papers again because I was looking for Spanish. But then I saw a paper in English with her name on it. And I said, oh, she wrote it in English after all. I said, well, okay. And so I read the paper. I read that first. Then I read the others to sort of compare. And she did a pretty good job. Not an A paper, but definitely B+. She did very well. And I saw her the week later and returned the paper back and said, you know, I was sort of looking forward to your paper in Spanish. She said, well, you gave me the option to do it in Spanish, but that made me feel more comfortable that maybe I can do it in English. And that was a big learning experience. And I thought, how many other students are like that who can actually are bilingual, but they don't feel sufficiently strong in English? You give them opportunity to do it in their native language, they can express themselves better. And because, you know, it's not an English course. It's a disability and neurology course. We don't care about, you know, what language it is. And so now there's so many translation services that are digital online that are free. You can put in whole papers. I don't do that because I don't trust it. But I do sections and then I give it to someone to look over. But it's possible. And again, it's extra work. It's more time. But the benefit is just tremendous. I've only done this one other time. I was in Japan, and I was teaching a course there, and these were freshmen in college taking a course on United States and disabilities, and they were allowed to do a PowerPoint, and they didn't do PowerPoints there, and also they could do it in English or in Japanese, and many of them did English just so they could show that they could do it in English. But when we had bilingual materials, that didn't help as much as knowing the culture, what I could not ask them to do in the classroom, because you can't ask them to ask questions, because they're not going to ask you questions. I had to bribe them to ask questions, because they never questioned the faculty. And so that was another learning experience for me, is that I can't assume anything because of a student who's not in my culture. There's some cultural things that I at least should try to know about in order to reach the student. Now, all these things I'm talking about, this is very, very hard because it takes more time. We can't teach the way we used to. But we can't go back. We can't stay where we are because there's too much at stake. But the thing is, how do we get teachers to do that? So one of the things that we've been doing at Lesley is we have a course in our master's program, which we changed recently, and it's now the first course as opposed to an elective somewhere else, where we talk about disabilities and helping students reach success in all different kinds of ways. And this is the first course in the master's program. It's more robust. It covers a lot of range of issues on the ability spectrum, but also what teachers must do, because it focuses on the teacher, what teacher has to do. It's been very successful. That course itself is a mega course. It's got lots of videos. It's got everything that you can imagine that's on there. But the person who's done this course, redesigned this course, her name is Sue Cusack, she has put in untold number of hours in order to do that. It's a big sacrifice. So we're not quite sure what to ask teachers to do, but we have to set the standard. We have to let them know that you can't leave anyone behind because there's too much at stake, especially for adult learners. So there's so much out there. How do you get started? Start small. I started small, and I just created a list of the things that some students that I know wanted or needed. And I kept that list on a card. And everything that came past me in terms of people making recommendations, in terms of technologies I found on the web, I checked it against that card. Is this going to help? And I didn't look at anything else. Because there's so much out there, you're going to get overwhelmed. I love it, and I'm overwhelmed every single day of my life. It's not pretty. So, I want it. So I try to take a note and keep, and go back. But I've got about 60 things that I've not looked at in a month because it's not what I'm looking for, but there's just so much new that's out there. Make a list. 2, check your digital devices against that list, apps, anything that, don't be married to a particular brand. I'm talking about iPads because I think that's the one product that's really a lot of new things, is really making headways in a lot of ways that I don't think it even thought it could. But look for everything because there's no panacea. 3rd, buy used. Don't feel like some of the early adopters that I know that you've got to buy the latest and greatest now. Buy used, especially in terms of the iPad, especially with this new iPad that's coming out. I don't know if you read about it, but everybody who's very, very much the early adopter is ditching their old iPads and getting the new one because they got to have it. Tell them, make a donation to you, or make there's soft spots too. Tell them I knew this is going to be used for teaching, or tell them cut a deal. It's used. Who knows what you've been doing with it? You get a coffee house, whatever you've got to do, and get it used. Because the Apple Care will go with it also, and then you can renew that Apple Care. And just as an aside, everyone's afraid of breaking their iPad. I found out that if you break the glass of an iPhone or an iPad, that's not the most important part. The back end is where all the brains are. So this is very easy to replace. I crushed my cell phone, my iPhone, and I was ready with my credit cards. Okay, I'll see you. I'll come to you in a second. I see your hand. And he said, and it was the guy at the Genius Bar said, the glass is nothing. You can do $30, $40 and replace that. It's the back end where all the brains are that's important. So buy a broken one for, $20, $30, and then get it repaired. You've got a new iPad or an iPhone. And buy the smallest. Don't have to get the 16, 32 gigabyte anything. Get the 8 and start small and work from there. And you can do that. I was asked to talk about the iPad and its downsides, the cons, especially as it relates to students with disabilities. There are several, and they're not small. One of them is that I don't believe you can just, except for someone who's really expressed an interest, you just can't give it to them because they don't know how to use it. And many students with disabilities have teachers and or parents who don't know how to use it, so there's no guidance. Second, let me back up a little bit. So what I would recommend, if you really find that the iPad might be a very good solution for them, you find someone to help them and strategize how you're going to make that introduction, how you're going to show them how to use it, how to search for apps or select apps for them, because otherwise it's an investment that's not going to be used. Second is that there's an app for that, or there will be an app for that. Some of the apps out there are not that great in certain categories, and I think there's all kinds of reasons for that. One of my biggest pet peeves is that there should be more writing apps out there, and there should be more life strategy apps out there, not how to do everything living, how to shop, how to pay your bills, how to travel, all different life things. And I'm just shocked how few apps there are to do that for students with disabilities who are post-secondary adults who need those additional skills. So there are a lot of categories that are really not meeting the need out there. Third is that some students feel that they want something more rigorous. There's a feeling that a desktop or laptop feels better to them, that this is more flimsy or not as robust. And in some ways it's not. sometimes a laptop or desktop is a better tool, especially if if they have other applications they want to use that you can't use on the iPad. I just see a comfort level, and I think because laptops and desktops are more, everyone knows what they are. It's more comfortable. But I think the biggest is that there's no training. I gave a presentation in March in Chicago, and a woman there has a son who is 23. I may go visit him because he has an iPad. He's had it now maybe 7 months, not used it because his aide does not know how to use it, and she won't help him with it because she doesn't want to learn how to use that. And this is what the mother told me. So I think that's the biggest impediment. You have to learn how to use it or have someone teach you how to use it well. To tag on to what I said is that at Mass Bay Community College, the Apple people gave them training, but also to all their people there, and they got a set of 30 iPads, and then they went to the different Apple stores to get training from the Apple stores, which is a very good idea. Also, I would add on to that when the time has come to have the students who use it train other students. That train the trainer is a very big help on other students, and because they know that this person understands how what their fears are or what they need to know. I want to leave you with one final comment, and that is that this is a new field. It's very exciting. I think in another 5 years we're going to be in a place that we couldn't fathom when we did before. I would suggest that you try one new thing, try it out with a student that you know, see if you can make a difference with that student, because I think the time is now to start working on these things, because it's a great field and someone can be served very well and have more success than they ever did before. Thank you very much.